it's been very fun to see Pat McAfee like dive into the women's basketball space and be a supporter and be genuinely curious. Like, he came in with Caitlin Clark, and he has said, I didn't know who DeWanna Bonner was until I watched her play against Caitlin Clark. I didn't know how good the New York Liberty were. And in trying to make a point about Caitlin Clark, in a positive way, I will say, but he referred to Caitlin Clark as a white B word. And oh boy, it blew the top off of this whole thing. And it really felt like a crescendoing of sorts, because it represented this shift in more people talking about women's basketball, but maybe not doing so in a way that's actually talking about women's basketball. Like, I want to talk about the teams and the games and everything else, and instead it's, why is this dude calling a woman the B word on air? He has apologized. Sports are so funny. Sports are the funniest thing in the world. Did you wake up yesterday and think you were going to end up having to get an apology from the third highest paid man at ESPN, who makes $17 million a year, for calling Caitlin Clark, the darling of the WNBA, a white B word?
Was not on my bingo card
not
for
on my
the year
bingo card.
or for yesterday. Listen, he apologized. I think that it's a weird space that we exist in as men right now, where we are treating women like peers and equals, and that
I disagree.
You disagree?
I think that's the problem.
Oh.
I think we're being treated as sideshows.
Okay.
Or as I think if they were thinking of women just from an athlete space, and we, like you said, we do this, so I'm not saying it's a perfect science, because we create narratives all over the place, but it's as if the drama has to be the needle mover to bring the WNBA forward into this. And if you were talking about them as athletes, you would I don't care who it is. There has never been an athlete on air who has been called something close to a white B word.
I would disagree vehemently.
Okay.
And I would use history of black men
Fair.
out there
Very fair.
competing. And so this,
Very fair.
My point was going to be, and we can talk more about it after I make the statement. I think we're trying to find a way to treat the women like peers, the way we treat these other athletes across sports. And the issue is, we don't treat them well. We don't talk about them the right way. So I hear what you're saying. We are adding a bit too much of the drama component to this. We are adding a bit too much of the racial component to this as well, adding a bit too much of the gender component to this as well. I will push back and say that's sports. That's how we do sports.
Yeah.
That was this was, we talked about, Clark and Reese being the magic bird of this, and it's not lost on anybody that one of them is perceived as a rural white person, and the other one a citified urban black person, right? Like, that's how that rivalry pops off. Did Magic and Larry Bird ask for it? No, but it became the great white hope versus this black guy. And boom, that's how it works. Floyd Mayweather used to fight Mexican boxers or Latin boxers every single de Mayo. Why? Because he wanted to be the villain in that community, and that drives viewers towards him. That's how we've done this sports thing. This sports thing really gets to popping off when you can give me a black one and a white one. And have them butt heads. That's really when it pops off. And they don't have to necessarily both be great. One great one versus the other one, and then we can butt heads in how we discuss and talk about these sports. And I think what we're finding is we've been doing that for decades with professional sports, with the men's side of professional sports. Now we're doing it on the women's side, and the women who are handling this with about as much grace, I think, that you can do right now in this situation. They're saying, no, don't talk about us like that. And boom, now it shifts into the gender side of the conversation. Yeah. Now it is, hey, don't talk about me like I'm just out here a jealous, vindictive B word. No, we're competitors. We're out here competing, trying our best. That's what's supposed to happen. It's going to get physical. It's been getting physical. You guys are just now starting to watch. And instead of listening when they say, hey, this is a physical league, it's been getting physical, what dudes have decided to do is double down. No, it ain't been this physical. What do you mean it hasn't been this physical? When there's video evidence throughout the history of the WNBA of these types of plays being made and these types of things happening. Like, what are we doing here? Just take a step back, take a pause, and this is what the need is. Listen to the women when they talk. Because they're telling you exactly what you need to hear. You don't need to bicker with them constantly.
Well, and that's my biggest thing, is this ability to listen. And Stephen A. Smith later in the day went on a little social media tirade, essentially talking about how he has platformed women, particularly black women, on his show, and women like Monica McNutt, and giving them an opportunity to talk. And instead of just understanding, like taking a step back and saying, listen, I was wrong in this moment. And to Pat McAfee's credit, like, he did, at least on social media, present the appropriate apology. And like, it doesn't have to be more than that, because I got a lot of that yesterday. I ended up on the wrong side of the internet yesterday, and it wasn't a very fun experience. And I had a lot of...
After I know we're talking about super serious things, super serious, as I stand here with a towel on my head. You sat right there. You looked at me and said, oh, no, they clipped it. I said, they clipped what? The Caitlin Clark thing. I was like, great, that's going to do numbers. You're like, yeah, I'm just not in the mood. I'm not going to go to the comment section. And then you got your happy-go-lucky ass up, left this fine establishment, and hopped immediately into the comment section. Some of that is your fault.
Okay, well,
I'm not saying, I'm not trying to, like, what was she wearing, this thing.
No, you can.
But, like,
no, you can.
Your choices have consequences. You shouldn't have been in that. You shouldn't have been in that part of town. And that part of town is a social media part of town.
Should have been in the wrong part of town. It was fun for a while. I actually had no issue, truly, no issue at all with the conversations around the Caitlin Clark video. Because, again, this all started from a hip check. This all started from a stupid foul in a game that was a foul off the ball that absolutely should have been called a flagrant one in real time, that ended up getting changed to a flagrant one the next day, and we are still talking about a Kennedy Carter hip check. That is the driver, but we all know that that is just the cherry on top of a conversation that has been building and has been waiting to erupt, and you put in a slow sports week with it, and it gives the opportunity for that to happen.
This is good for everybody, because the Kennedy Chandler hip check on Caitlin Clark is the tip of the iceberg. We've got a lot of stuff under the water that's underlying, that is a real social problem here in this nation with how we treat women and talk about women and interact with women on the dude side of things.
Right.
And sports, this is why I love sports so much, because the tip of the iceberg always comes up in sports, right? And then we can use that tip to talk about all the other stuff, but we have to have that tip first. You got to get you just need that tip first. That tip got to poke out, and then you can dive into the real issue. So yes, it all started, to your point, with the hip check, but we are past that. We are no longer talking about them right now. We're talking about us as dudes and how we view and talk about women, not just in sports, but in our lives.
In life.
So just take a minute, shut the hell up. Listen, what was the thing that all the white people were doing? They were throwing up the black squares like, oh, I'm an ally, I'm listening. Throw your black squares back up. Be an ally to these women and listen to what they got to say, damn it.
Thanks for not making them pink squares. Appreciate it.
Oh, that's even better.
Assuming that we all like the color pink.
Make them pink squares.
No, but I do think it was an interesting exercise yesterday, and I am usually team of... I've avoided comments. I've grown in how I interact on social media and not letting it rule the world. But yesterday just felt like an inundation of something that a lot of women in the sports space have been feeling for a long time. And it felt like yesterday just kind of like pushed a lot of us over the edge. This was a collective. Like, this was not just this is not about Jess. This is about women in the sports space. And so the hip check and the Caitlin Clark conversation, that's fine. Like, Caitlin Clark fans are wildly passionate about her, and that's great. I think that's ultimately good for the continued growth of the game, and you hope they stick around. And Caitlin Clark, this is just the beginning for Caitlin Clark. Let's all remember that. And with Kennedy Carter, like, she and Angel Reese both talked yesterday later in the day about how they're fine being the villains. They're fine being the bad guys. But then when the Pat McAfee side of it popped off, there was a genuine anger and upsetness that came with somebody who makes that much money with that big of a platform, someone who has indicated that he's genuinely interested in helping grow the game, and someone who is committed to being a new fan of the game, feels so comfortable using the B word and doing it in a way that, and he said, like, intent can get muddled. So the intent was certainly not to be derogatory. The intent was to, like, make a funny ha-ha. And that's why all of the men around him on his show didn't even miss a beat when he said it, because that's how men talk. And, like, we know that. That's not the question of it all. But if you're trying to grow the game, there has to be an understanding that the most effective way to do that is not to go around calling women the B word. And I had a lot of really angry Pat McAfee stans, and they are strong and they are forceful, and they really want you to know that he's a good guy. And that's my one story. I met Pat McAfee once, and I often referred to it as the instance of, like, they say never meet your heroes. He was awesome. Like, he was fun, he was boisterous, he could not have been nicer. He was here for the Memphis College game day experience when they played SMU, and game day was on Beale Street. And Pat McAfee was here, and it was like right at the beginning of the building of his being such a big part of ESPN. Could not have been a nicer guy. Does not need to make the point he was making by saying the B word. And all of these dudes were coming for me saying, like, you say you want equality and then you get it. And I'm like, equality doesn't come from calling women the B word. Support doesn't come from calling women the B word.
But to their point, and this is terrible, it does, because we are derogatory. And that's the issue is, and keep going down that iceberg, not only should we not be talking about women like that, we shouldn't be talking about dudes that way in either. Nobody should be talked about in a derogatory way. The issue is with some of these people and some of these dudes is, I would say that about a dude, so why can't I say that about a woman? I would call him a blah, 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 blah,
but
blah.
But they only call men the B word in a bad way. That's the problem with the word.
Okay, now
B,
we're talking about the specific
word itself. That's
I was
my
talking
point.
about just in general. We're talking about that word.
Mad shit all the time. I say the F word 100 times a day. I'm trying to be better about it. Like, I'm a potty mouth. I go out and about. This isn't about being like a prude and not swearing. Hell, I wish people could swear more in this world. Never forget the great swear draft of 2023. That said, it's that word and the connotations around it. Because if a man is calling another man a B word, what does it mean? He never says, like, oh, this dude's a bad beat. No, it's derogatory. It means he's soft. It means he's a crybaby. When you say life's a B, you're not saying life's a blast. You're saying life sucks. When you're saying, like, someone got the B end of the stick, it means they got the bad part of it. And, like, I know genuinely it means female dog, but there's a sexualization to it, and then women have reclaimed it. And so there's a lot of context. And that's what men kept telling me, context. You have to post the whole clip. It's context. No, the context is that someone, in trying to be positive, used a word that is seen very negatively when men say it to women, particularly when straight men say it to women. I'll just say that. Like, if one of my girlfriends says the B word to me, it's different. If one of my gay friends says the B word to me, it's different. But when most men are saying it, it's putting women in a place of being an other, and it's putting women in a place of being down.
The Jessica Benson Show with CJ Hart, live every weekday at 8 a.m.